I think that we've really done a good job of talking about this already, but and I think you all have a really good concept of the importance of understanding your why behind behind why you're doing something. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of good things we can do out there, but that doesn't mean they're all for us. And I think sometimes we get caught up in this production wheel. We've got to be doing, if it's a good thing, I got to do it. If it's a good thing, I got to do it. Instead of stopping and examining, okay, that is a good thing, but why would I do it? Would I do it to people please? Would I do it because people expect me to do it? Or would I do it because it's something I'm really authentically passionate about? And I think that is another thought that I hadn't really put a lot of thought into until it was kind of introduced years ago. I would say I did it in a few areas of my life, but I didn't really understand I was identifying the why. And we kind of touched on that earlier, but before we move out of that, do you guys have any comments on that?
In terms of like setting a why or coming back to it?
Yeah.
I would say for me, I feel like I act on my why or values more in like hard circumstances or ones that seem like scary or intimidating or even like not like reckless, but I'm just a chronic thinker through into like overthinker realm. And so making even like split decisions or ones I haven't thought about for like 3 months feels reckless. So that's what I mean by reckless. Not actually though. But like a lot of my like coming back to my why has meant like leaving a lot of spaces and like simultaneously entering into new ones. But if that's like leaving the school I was at or I just, keep quitting jobs because corporate America is probably not for me, but we're also in college and we don't have a degree yet. So corporate America it is. But it's just like, yeah, it's just like, I can't leave this space. I just got here, or like, it's not that bad because other people don't say it's bad type of thing. And then just kind of like getting back to and reassessing the values and the why of like, wait a minute, this is actually like to me personally, or for the life I want to live, or if I'm thinking about making this within like the people I surround myself with, it doesn't make sense not to leave or whatever that may be. It's not always leaving, but like, the only thing that's keeping me from staying is like other people's reasoning for staying in places or other people's values or lack thereof type of thing, I think. And so that's where I feel like I always come back to my why is more the tougher things versus like, I guess the good, fun things like this is good, I should do it. It's more like, this is really hard, but it doesn't mean it's bad and it doesn't mean it's wrong. And honestly, it's like probably more so, most certainly the most right thing to do is to like go after that hard thing. And it's probably going to be awkward and probably people aren't going to understand. There's going to be a lot of tears and all these things. But then you look back a year later and you can't imagine not saying no and stuff like that. So I feel like that's where it comes in for me.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and kind of goes into what I want to talk about next in growing out of expectations in terms of, and I think this and the why and the boundaries are all interconnected. And it's like living out of the expectations that you set for yourself and not the expectations of the world around you, your family, your church, your job, the culture. But so I want you to talk about how you have identified a way. I'm going to start with Dad this time, because I think this is a path that he's really traveled well over the years. And I think he's really arrived at that space now through both of us having some hard lessons, but I don't want to speak for you. So
more on the growth side?
That just how do you living out of your own expectations versus the expectations of the world around you, the people around you?
Yeah, I kind of flippantly say this, and I actually say it at work too. I'm old enough now that I don't give a shit. So that's a good basis to be from, but it's also from learned experience that I've gotten there.
Kylie, can I just say, Kylie, she didn't have her mic on so nobody could hear, but Kylie goes, "Me too, Dad."
Yeah, that was literally going to be my first response to this question. Is like, well, I don't really give a fuck about what people think. I don't know what to say.
And that's a liberating place to be, actually, when you can get there. And it's because of everything that we've been talking about, that self-care, setting boundaries, being intentional about your values, coming back to them when you get off center. That's one thing I was going to add in the why piece. I mean, I would highly recommend, and we've thrown a couple things out there, but I would highly recommend you find the right process for you to find that why, whether it's Simon Sinek or Martha Books, North Star, or what have you, because I have found after going through that work, my body tells me when I get off center. And that's one thing that helps me come back even more because I've done that work. But from the expectation standpoint, really has shifted for me from I'm going to go be at the top of my industry and I'm going to crush it. I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. I was going to be an athletic director. I was going to be this. And what I know now for me is pouring into another Brene Brown term, my square squad, which is fairly small. It's this group here and a couple other people. But that's my why, is pouring into those people that matter most to me. And certainly at work too, those work relationships. And that's what I focus on now. So yeah, I wanted to rule the world in my industry, but that's not important to me anymore. More important is, what am I doing for my people?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And I think, you and I both learned that kind of the hard way. I've spent most of my life in a realm of codependency that I didn't even realize I was in, and a sense of feeling responsible for everyone else around me. And if I don't take care of it, it's not going to get taken care of. And so within that definition, you can see there's no boundaries. There's living out of expectations of everyone else around you, or what they think you need to do, or they think you need to do. Into this space of, over the last year and a half, realizing that's just not working for me. It really hasn't been working for me for a long time, but my body,
people around us either.
No. And girls, comments on that too, about where Dad and I have been and where we're going, and how that's
where we've been could be painful.
I know. Be ready to hear the hard stuff, people. You don't get here on the easy road. But yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I learned how to grow out of expectations at a very early age because I was a highly sensitive kid in an environment that we didn't know had language for high sensitivity.
No.
So I was the outcast. I was socially a little ostracized. I mean, I had some like minor levels of like name calling or bullying throughout elementary, middle school, but like really harmful expectations from extended family about my intellect or like how smart I was because of the way I acted, or because I'm like goofy or, like a little spacey sometimes. But all of these things, actually, it was kind of the reverse for me, from like taught me how to not be afraid to expect more for myself, but less from people. But also just the idea of like, when I like depersonalize, which I don't know if that's a word, when I depersonalize other people's behavior, or like just decide that like, you know what, like, why am I taking that personally right now? When I take that responsibility on for myself, I actually like find that I'm like, oh, expectations too. Like, people can do whatever the fuck they want. Like, as if I'm in like aligned with myself and in centered, then I actually find like myself asking, why am I personalizing that? Or like, why am I, a lot with like romantic partners too, like, why am I personalizing their behavior right now? Like, that's about them. And if they make that decision for themselves, then that's theirs to deal with. But why am I connecting myself to that decision? Was really helpful for me. But also going after big things from like an intellectual standpoint, the past year has been super liberating, and learning how to expect more from self, but not necessarily rely so much on the behavior of other people to determine self-worth, personhood, etc.
So. Yeah. Very good.
I would say Kylie is a queen at this. She always has been. However, my name is Sierra. I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm a recovering emotional monitor. I'm a recovering achievement, Wonder Woman complex. So this question is very real to me because just over 2 months ago now, I let my entire professional and social life burn to the ground because it was 100%. We let that shit burn because it was 100% coming from this place of me truly making decisions because everyone else needed me to be something I hadn't been for 3 years. And it was the constant narrative of like, I can't leave yet, even though I don't believe in this anymore because so-and-so needs me. I can't leave yet, even though I don't believe in this anymore because it will let these people down. It will disappoint that person. It will make that person feel bad. It will make that person over in Boston sad. You know, like it was all about perception and how it affect other people because other people would be affected because they would be disappointed because they would suffer, and nothing about how I was being affected, which became really, really serious. And so the week that I quit my job that I wasn't supposed to quit for another 3 months and was really in a lot of ways, you know, in some ways letting people down just like I thought it was. In some ways, people didn't care like a quarter of as much as I thought they would. But driving and had the realization of like, Sierra, you disappointing other people is worth you not abandoning yourself anymore. Oh. You disappointing other people is not worth you abandoning yourself anymore. And that had to become true for me. Because some of it was like, oh my gosh, I care so much about this person. I want them to feel taken care of. I never want them to suffer. So I'm going to stay. Some of it was fear of perception. It was a whole gamut, but it came to the point of like through a truckload of therapy, and a lot of people fighting for me before I knew how to fight for myself. And a lot of me learning all of me was worth fighting for. Was the realization of like, you always have to choose to disappoint other people before you choose to disappoint yourself. And I think actually, Mom, we were talking and it was as you were processing, like, listen, I tried my whole life not to disappoint people and I still disappointed them. Like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, I worked so hard to not disappoint them and they were still disappointed. So you may as well just do what you want to do anyways, because no matter what, you're going to disappoint them. Like, you can never live up to what people think of you in your mind and their expectations. And so I think that was really helpful to recognize of like, oh, wow, okay, I'm going to disappoint them anyways, no matter what. So you may as well just actually do what you need and what you want. In a way that's, and like, I was clearly not being flippant, you know? And so I think that became really important for me this last 2 months of like, I will always disappoint people. It's always worth disappointing people before it's worth abandoning myself. And letting that ring true has been my journey because I have to like truly, and all the people here can attest to this, I had never let people down before that.
Ever. From the time she was in preschool. From the time she was 2 years old, trying to help take care of Kylie when Kylie was born. So this isn't a lifelong
perfection. Perfection.
So it was like truly at one point, it was like whether or not I leave this job early or whatever. I remember looking at my partner, Tim, and being like, honestly, I should just try to let people down just to see what it feels like. I've just never done it before. And then learning like, oh my gosh, that was the most liberating thing I've ever done. I like feel more myself than I've ever felt my whole life. And so, yes, that has been my journey 2 months in to learning. It's always worth disappointing people before you abandon yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's such a great point, Bug. Yeah. I mean, I think about this question and, you know, what you were just saying, and we've given a couple examples of it throughout our conversation, but you really can grow out of those expectations. You really can make progress. And it is one little step at a time, whether it's naming your feelings, whether it's doing whatever. I've had conversations with my therapist, Addie, and she's actually held you all, mainly our daughters and Melissa and I, coming along for the ride as we've talked about today. But she referenced just in my last session with her, she's like, well, your family does it so well, because I've described to her the language that we're using, how we're setting up for team meetings, clear the airs, all that stuff led by you three and us really learning from you. But she just, pulls our family out to be a model because of what we are doing. And we haven't by any means always been like this. And we have a long ways to go. But my goodness, what a better place I think we are in as a family, just because of the small steps you all started taking and us finally waking up and coming along with you. It can be done. That's what I want to throw out there to your audience is there is hope wherever you are right now.
Yeah. No matter how old you are,
that you want to be.
And you can learn from your children, and that's okay.
100%.
I mean, I think there's this like stigma out there that, we're older, wiser. And in some ways we are, because just simply life. I mean, part of the reason I wanted to do this podcast is to share what I've learned so that hopefully people can avoid the missteps I've taken and get to these spaces earlier. We've learned from our daughters, be a learner. Don't let anyone tell you can't change. Don't let anyone tell you can't reprogram your brain and learn new habits and rechannel your subconscious, all those things you can. And at the same time, I want people to know that we all love each other fiercely, but we have fought for these relationships. They haven't always been easy. This hasn't just unfolded. It does take a commitment and a love for your people to want to do this and a love for yourself, thinking enough of yourself to do it, because that in turn, if you're really going to have healthy relationships, I think that you have to be on these paths that we have decided to go down for the relationships to be truly healthy, because you have to be healthy. You can't be healthy in a relationship if you yourself aren't healthy. Court, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, yeah.
I knew it.
I feel like, bouncing off of both things that Kylie and Sierra said, I think for the ways that Kylie can kind of attest to being a little bit ostracized because she was like quirky and out there and stuff like that. I'm just an introverted, just introspective, quiet little beanhead in a family full of people who like to make friends on airplanes in random crowds. And it's great, but I just could never relate to that type of thing. And so I think that was one of the biggest things for me growing up, is just kind of coming in to that quietness and stuff. And this is what I have to say, and it's probably not as much as other people have to say, but that doesn't make it less valid, and no one needs to fill in the gaps for me. I said what I said, and if I wanted to say more, I would have, but no one needs to speak for me and that type of thing. And so I think that was kind of what I had to grow out of and shift with in an area. And then kind of how Sierra talked about disappointing people is no longer worth abandoning myself. I think I spent probably I would say being 22, maybe 18 to 20 years of my life trying to fit in other people's boxes and stretching myself and shrinking myself in probably every way to try to do that, and just to earn acceptance or love or popularity or whatever it was. And I think, so if Sierra says the disappointing people isn't worth it, then I would say what people called love or acceptance, that wasn't worth going for, I think, for me. Of I'm not it might be called love or acceptance, but I'm not gonna kind of call it that any longer. I'm not gonna allow it to kind of be called that. And that stretching and shrinking and abandoning myself in all those different ways isn't worth it anymore. And I think it was more so just getting to 22, or I guess at that point maybe it was 21, and just kind of being terrified that like the way that I'm existing in the world, in whichever the way that is, none of it is like my own doing. Like none of it is kind of like my choice, and like I don't really know who I am type of thing. So I think, yeah, I'm like, I don't really know. There's not like a, sorry, didn't I just make to cry?
That's all right.
You're sorry, baby.
Feeling all the feelings, baby. It's a safe space.
But yeah, I think it was just like, it was like good, but a little bit scary of like, yeah, just like I'm 22 years old and I don't know who I am because I've just tried to be like everything else that like everyone wanted. And so I think, but it's been like good because I think this year has been just like probably one giant kind of like exhale. And actually it's just been like so fun to get to see like all of these like things that I'm getting to actually like live out currently and stuff, with like doing art and stuff like that, and kind of like living where I want to live and going to school where I want to go to, and all those different things is kind of like it's always been there, like what I've felt or wanted or desired or like thought myself to be has like always been there, and I'm finally kind of just listening to it type of thing. And I've just like just kind of got to the point where I was just exhausted of like, my God, it's just not worth it. And whoever wants to come along can like come along, and whoever doesn't can just stay back type of thing. But I think growing out of expectations is kind of like the storyline of my whole life. So yeah.
Well, Dad, it's noticeable, Court. Dad and I don't know how many times we've talked about in the last 6 months that you are the happiest, most at peace you've ever been. Just the total authentic self. And it's just been really cool to see.
Yeah. I think it was like, it was cool reading Untamed by Glennon. I think that was like one of the first books I was like, whoa, other people feel this way, because she talks about being tamed at like 10 years old. Yeah. And I think I probably was like maybe even 7 for me. So.
Yeah. Really true. Shout out to Glennon Doyle. All right.
Shout out to you, Court.
Yeah.
It's been really an honor to see what you've done this last year to break out of that. Very, very impressive, honey.
Yeah. Really
Thanks.
is. Really is. Makes our hearts feel happy. All right. I think this one kind of segues nicely. And I'm going to start with you, Dad, on accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. I think that we tend to want to focus on the things that make us feel good or are positive. We sometimes want to brush the yucky stuff under the table or push it away, but it's all part of it makes us who we are. Without any of those experiences, not that we want to relive that, some of the bad ones, but they're all part of our journey. And you want to speak to that? Because we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big one for me, and you all know this. I mean, the journey that I'm on, it speaks right to that. The layered self, the fully integrating. I mean, for me, I've been really good at really closing off a significant part of myself and going overachieving, hypervigilance, overactivity route. So I didn't have to slow down enough to really start to understand and work through those layers. I'm still in that process right now. But I've siloed myself out pretty good because of my childhood trauma, and I'm just now addressing it. And I think it's 100% important to do. It's where I'll get to where I know I can be as an integrated full self. And it is a part of my story. There are pieces of that sexual abuse that has made me who I am today. And instead of keeping it off into this side silo piece, I want to fully integrate it. I want to understand all of it more. And that's why I'm in therapy and doing the work that I'm doing. But I'm tired of it being this piece that I keep over here, and not part of my overall self, and certainly not part of my forward-facing external self. And so that's a big part of my journey moving forward, is to fully integrate and embrace all of it so I can be the person I was meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this was really big for me recently as well. I think it's something I had uncovered in therapy, in deciding to like quit my job and leave the community I was in, was like really struggling with believing that if I did things to disappoint people, then I was bad. Like that would confirm that I was what I was afraid of, which is that I'm bad. And a lot of what I had to work through with my therapist was integrating and holding space for the reality that like the decision I was making was going to affect people. It was even going to put some people in a bind. It was even going to be hard for some people. And some of that was because it was a really broken system. Some of that was because the timing of it, and that I needed to make this decision, and it didn't change the fact that I needed to make it, but it was going to put people in a bind. And so the practice of literally sitting and writing multiple times a day over and over again, like I can make choices that disappoint people and I am still good. I can make decisions that make things hard for people and I am still good. I can make decisions that affect people and I am still good. I'm still worthy, those kinds of things. So I think it was learning, and is learning, to hold the gray of like, also truly, sometimes I just mess up. Like sometimes I am like not nearly as kind as I hope to be at work or whatever. And I'm not the person that I want to be every moment of every day. And I think the narrative that we really grew up with, and that, in a lot of ways is prevalent, specifically in the like white evangelical church, is that you are inherently bad, that the core of what you are is bad, that when you do bad things, that just confirms it. And so it was difficult to separate, like, I can just mess up and I am still good. Yeah. I can do things that are bad, even sometimes. I can be unkind when I don't want to be. And I like, the deepest thing about me is still good and worthy. And so for me lately, that's been like, I've literally just had to sit and make it a mantra, and sit and make it, like, write it as many times as I can to believe it, and repeat it to myself in a way that is saying, like, I can do things that disappoint people. I can make decisions that are hard for other people, and I am still good. Has been a really important practice for me lately.
Yeah. And I think you made a good point too. I mean, we spent much of your childhood and a lot of our adulthood in a lot of these spaces, the white evangelical spaces you talked about earlier, that sent these really contradictory messages. You're saved by grace and you were loved so much that you were that I can't talk, that God did that for you. But boy, it's a good thing because you are a wretched sinner. And it's like, I don't understand if I'm worthy enough to be loved, but yet I'm wretched. I don't know how those work together. And I think that adds a lot of complications to our layers and our expectations and the other expectations, a lot of things we've talked about. So I'm glad you brought that up, because we've all been dismantling that in our own ways and our own journeys the last couple of years. All right. Any other thoughts on the layers piece of ourselves?
Yeah, I would say for me, I think the accepting the layered aspect of myself like went hand in hand with the growing out of expectations. I think I just am like a super, super, super complex person, like maybe the most complex person that I know, I guess. And I just like don't fit in one certain box. Like I'm quiet, but I'm not like this sweet, tender, quiet person. Like I also just like put you in your place and talk shit and stuff like that. And I'm like, but I'm also like quiet, but that doesn't mean I don't have a lot to say or that I don't like feel things deeply or think about things intentionally and stuff like that. And so I think, that kind of went like the hand in hand with the growing out of expectations, of just like, and kind of the holding all the emotions at once. And just like all these different things, and kind of was a part of like the harder part of, maybe learning the self-care and self-love was the like kind of, layered aspects of like, it's okay that I'm like sometimes a contradiction of myself or like most of the time type of thing. And so, that's kind of, I mean, I didn't add like too much in there, but that was kind of the synopsis for me, I think, is just like, I'm just not going to become simple anytime soon because I'm 22 and haven't changed, and I shouldn't like have to, or like shouldn't have ever been asked to type of thing. So that's kind of what comes up for me.
Yeah.
I think the good thing there, Court, is, and great work on your part. I mean, whether people want to realize it or not, they've got those layers, and you just realized it a heck of a lot earlier than I ever did. But from that standpoint, if people don't feel those layers, don't know they have those layers, everybody has those layers. I mean, the internal family systems work and the inner child work that people can do would certainly highlight that. But kudos to you for recognizing it way early in your life.
Thanks.
Kai?
Yeah, I think embracing layers for me has mostly looked like recently putting a lot less expectation on being emotionally consistent. Whether that's like, I am a deeply feeling person and therefore I feel joy deeply, but I also feel this really deeply. And being able to remove expectation that there's like something wrong with that. But also, even in the way that I engage with conflict with friends or family, being so much more willing to like go to somebody and be like, ah, shit, dude, I fucked it up. Like, I'm sorry. Whereas like 2 years ago, I would have like tiptoed around that. Whereas I feel much more comfortable going to like my roommate friend or my sisters and be like, I was an ass, like my bad. Like, how can we fix it? And just being like really frank with that. I also learned a conflict model that was really helpful, but was really like packaged. And therefore it didn't like necessarily work for me and how I evolved as a person the last couple of years. So I've kind of had to reframe it for myself. And like, I want to have these hard conversations and I want to engage in conflict, but I want to engage in it in a way that like speaks to me and who I am as a person and like embraces that rawness and that vulnerability. And like, I'm able to say that like I was a dick, but like also that I still like love myself really deeply. And like, I'm not actually like thinking that I'm like internally or at the core, a bad person. So I think it's like being able to like bring some casualty to it of like, yeah, like, sorry about earlier. I was kind of an ass. Like, can we talk about it? And then getting into that better language, but really just being more upfront about it of like, then tiptoeing around it or even like putting kind of like a bow on it. I don't know. I don't really want to put a bow on it anymore, I guess is where I'm into. But yeah, it's looked like handling conflict a little more candidly that feels authentic to myself. And then also, I cried 6 times last week, but I'm a deeply joyful person too. And those can coexist. Leave me alone.
Yeah, no, but that's really true though. And you all do that well. And I talked about that at the onset, is that ability, we don't have to be positive all the time, but we can feel multiple things. I mean, I can be at the same time thankful for my job, for my family, for my home, but still at the same time recognize that there's a lot of things in this country that aren't working right now within our systems, within our, race relations, within our government, within this, toxicity. I can feel things at the same time. Just because I feel those things that need to be fixed doesn't mean I'm not at the same time thankful for the things I have. And I think there's this thing that we have to be one or the other. And you guys all do that really well. And I think it's important that understand that we can carry all those things, and we need to feel all those things, or like we've talked about, they get stuck and they show up in other unhealthy ways. We've spent a lot of time together. I want to real quick, and this is something we've all really touched on, so it's really going to be just a kind of summary for each of you on, the name of the podcast is F.E.E.L, feeling empowered, embracing layers. How do you think you live that out in just a quick summation? Bug.
Yeah, I think it's right now for me, what it is having a pulse and centering the question, what am I feeling? What do I need? How can I get it? My needs are worth being met. I need to be familiar with them in order to meet them. And only I can meet them. And then operating from that way and letting that be my guide right now. So I think that's what it looks like for me in this moment. It's taken a lot of back work of emotional literacy and being aware of my feelings. I think it looks like sometimes even just like sitting, like I mentioned earlier, like sitting down, doing a body scan, asking how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it. But letting the thing that leads me in life be, what do I need? And how can I get that need met? And then even sometimes like, what do I want? And how can I be led by that in my day, and being so aware and in tune with myself in that's where I'm coming from, and how I'm showing up for people with my needs met, so that I can just be fully present with my people.
Yeah, really good stuff. Kai.
The first thing that comes to mind, and the main thing that comes to mind for me, is I'm recognizing week and really the last couple weeks, this world moves way too fast for me, and the like designed and wired. So how I've been honoring my layers and feeling empowered is my Sundays, which are my off days for my job. I actually move slower than maybe is like even my natural bravado, just to really, really get centered and slow down. Thank you.
That word.
Vocabulary.
Are you a grad student?
Are you in the number one program in the nation?
I felt it. Let me tell you. No. But I move slower than is my natural rhythm, just to really like get down my core, center myself. I don't put clothes on until 3 p.m. Sunday, I did not put clothes on until 3 p.m. And that was beautiful for me. It worked so well for me. And no one in this family understands that. And I'm sorry, but it it works. It's worked so well for me. Walking. Yep. Dad, I get it from you. Walking around with just a blanket as my layer is like the definition of me embracing myself, my layers, feeling empowered. I wrote like a letter to my boyfriend. I wrote a letter to my grandma. Like I really and I played Johnny Swing. I really just chilled the fuck out. And for me, that is like vibing. that me is what feels good right now. But I'm also open to fluidity of like, that's not going to feel good or is going to be the answer to this question 6 months from now. And I feel like that's kind of the same with the why question that we were discussing earlier, is like, I have multiple things that embrace my layers and make me feel empowered. I have multiple things that are my whys, and they fluctuate because, again, I'm a deeply complex human. So, but that's what feels good right now. And that's how I'm honoring myself, is on Sundays, I stay naked and I write love letters.
Good for you.
Yeah.
All right, Cordy.
Yeah, I think a lot of my stuff is much the same, of just like in the kind of like reclaiming of my life and stuff like that, of just asking myself like, what do I want and what do I need? And I think because I spent a lot of like my time and stuff just kind of like going through the motions, or even asleep a little bit or numb to things, I kind of have to change up what that looks like, or I have to check in each day, because if I try, like I do like structure of things, but if I do it too much, it feels kind of like a little intimidating or scary to kind of just like slip into that. And I find myself just going through it, kind of the motions. And so, yeah, just asking myself, like, what is it that I specifically want for myself, like today, in this hour, this morning, or like out of this life type of thing. And a lot of that lately has looked like my best friend Cara and I dreaming about running away to Europe because it just is maybe the only thing that makes sense to do with our lives. um, because we're like the aesthetic, man, the slow life, as I'm figuring out that corporate America is not for me. Um, so like dreaming about these things, it's like, haha, but then it's like, no, if it actually comes down to it and like that's what you want out of life, then like definitely run away to Europe or, wherever type of thing. And so I think just like letting myself just get caught up in the daydreams more. And I think as I've come more into self-care and knowing myself better, the daydreams don't feel as much like daydreams. And they kind of just feel like real dreams and like they could be tangible in reality, which is really fun to live in that little bit of euphoria. So yeah.
I really like what you said about the waking up piece, because one of the things that I've really learned in the last year and a half, and we've all talked about it in different ways tonight, and is there were so many things in my body and my emotions that I've noticed the last year and a half. I'm like, gosh, where did that come from? Where did that come from? And my counselor's like, it's not so much that it came from anywhere. You're just noticing it now. You finally have woken up and come out of autopilot and are dealing with your feelings and not trying to compartmentalize things in a way that you're noticing that now. And that's been, so I think that awakening and just being willing to feel and being brave enough to feel, and taking ourselves, out of, again, those expectations of others, and making sure our whys are solid and having boundaries and owning who we are and embracing all those layers allows us to feel.
Yeah, would 100% echo all four of you, and probably add a piece for me. I probably would add a 30 into feel maybe on that layering piece, because I'm really exploring my layers, and then once discovered, embracing. And so I'm on that journey, and it's, we've done a dream wall.
Yeah. That's why we're here at this podcast. We put it on the dream wall. Here we are. Yep. That dreams that Courtney was talking about, daydreaming, feeling real. Here we are.
Yeah. Very therapeutic doing that and helping to center on your why there. So for me, it's a continual exploration of, and then embracing it, and therapy is helping me on that front. The tools I've learned from our wonderful daughters and from my therapist, of breathing exercises. We haven't talked about breathing at all yet, but that's been a big piece for me in the last year and a half. So I can start to feel those sensations and pinpoint where it is in my body and all the rest. Also, getting me out of my hypervigilance and regulating me and grounding me. So a lot of breath work, a lot of journaling. Driving has always been big for me. Music is big for me. Golf, just really those centering things that get me as close to peace as possible.
Well, I think for you and I both, slowing down enough to feel. You and I have both been go, 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 go. We don't sit well. We don't, we like to keep moving. And I think a lot of that was just because if we stopped to start feeling everything, we'd have to deal with it. And so I think that's been a lot of what we've gone through too, both of us.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately for me, and all four of you know this, I mean, if I did slow down, or if I felt like I was slowing down, that's when I'd go into my numbing.
Yeah.
And so trying to replace all of that, making progress, but not completely yet, but trying to replace all that with being present, being in the now, and actually feeling.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Any last thoughts on feel before we go into our rapid fire to wrap this up? All right, our Kylie's gonna fall asleep. It is 11:05 on the East Coast. Woo! All right, rapid fire.
Champ guy.
Okay, let's start with Courtney. I'm gonna go in your rapid fire. So the rapid fire is gonna be name 5 activities that nourish you and 5 words on how you want to feel in the next 6 months.
Okay. My activities are road trips, and if road trips aren't attainable, like life lately, Then car rides with windows down, playing music, because if I could have a superpower, it'd be the ability to sing. And I just like the feeling, especially on summer nights. Those are my favorite, to have the windows down listening to music. Going to the coast, which has always been a thing, but has been like, it's like a tangible thing now.
Yeah.
Reading for fun, got back into that lately. And then coffee shop dates, and creating with photography or simple painting.
Mm.
And then how I want to feel. Is that the other thing?
Yeah, 5.
Present, steady, connected, joyful, and then at home in my body.
Ooh, good stuff. All right. Kai.
My activities are I like to do yoga. I kind of put that with meditation. So I'll say that my second one is I like to interpretive dance.
Mm-hmm.
I sing, I read for pleasure, and I create spoken words. And those are the 5 things that really indulge me and nourish me. How I want to feel the next 6 months. I want to feel boundaried. I want to feel content. I want to feel present. I want to feel indulgent. And I want to feel, what was the last one I said? Liberated. Ah, yes. My favorite thing to feel.
All right. Court.
My other activity is Millie rocking. If Kylie's been interpretive dance, I love to Millie rock. I have forever. You can Millie rock to any song if you try hard enough.
And she's got it down to a science. She truly can Millie rock to any song. Thank you, Court. All right, Bug.
Activities would be walking outside, journaling / meditating, going to new coffee shops with my partner Tim and playing Bananagrams or Nerds. There's a card game we love.
Road trip. Kick everybody's butt in.
It's true. We just went up against like 7 other people in Bananagrams last week, and both of us won every round. Not bragging. But now I can incorporate bravado, Kylie. Yes. So going to coffee shops with Tim, traveling, road tripping, really, really nourishing for me. And then going to therapy. I don't know if I just overdid it, but yeah, going to therapy is really nourishing to me right now. And then my feelings, the 5
things you want to feel in the next 6 months.
Would be, I want to feel hopeful. I want to feel free. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel like I'm healing. I don't say healed, healing. I think that's always a process. And present.
Very good. All right. Grade.
A couple similarities. For me, those things that nourish me is this right here, my lovely ladies. Whether I get you all together or one-on-one, I always come away from conversations with the 4 of you, either together or individually, much more nourished. That's my number 1 go-to. But for other pieces, golf is a big piece for me. Got a little golf group and get 2 rounds in over the weekend. Music has always been a big piece of me, and really getting back into it. So it's fairly present wherever I'm at now, is attested to the awesome Father's Day present that my ladies gave me, my speaker for golf.
Toe tapping king.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. Walking, really trying to be intentional about getting 15,000 steps in a day. It just seems to ground me. It gives me time to think through things, to be mindful, to even meditate. I promise I don't walk with my eyes closed, but can get some meditation in during that time as well. Journaling, which hasn't been a big piece for me. It's only come up in the last year and a half, but a lot of journaling. Reading, I'm pretty much devouring most of PTSD, CTPSD pieces that I can get my hands on. Driving, that's been mentioned a couple of times. I think maybe we ingrained that in our lovely ladies with all the road trips we took. So
we drove across America a couple of times.
A few times. And I would also say, just like Bug did, professional therapy really is nourishing. There was a piece just recently where my therapist was on maternity leave, and I became a little untethered for that stretch. So good to be back in it. And it does definitely nourish me. And then also self-therapy. So a little more than 5 maybe. But how I want to feel, first and foremost, integrated. I want to get to a spot where I do feel like I've integrated all those layers. I want to feel contentment. I want to feel progress down that road of my journey. I know I won't never arrive, but I want to feel that there's progress made. I want to feel healthier. And I also want to feel a void. I want to be void of somatic illness. That would be wonderful if that happens in the next 6 months.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. And thank you for your vulnerability tonight and being willing to share your personal journeys and our collective journeys. And I think, and I hope this really gives our audience insight to who we are and why I'm here. And I can tell you, I'm sure after listening to this, you all out in the audience world can understand why I've learned so much from these people and why they're so important to me and why I thought it was so important that you hear from them, because they individually and collectively are just, treasures in this world and super wise. And if you want to know more about them, again, look in the show notes and follow the things they're doing. They're lights in the world, and it's an honor to have them as mine. So on that, we are going to close this Meet the Crooks episode. We thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next week as you get to meet my producer, Valencia San Luis. So thank you all and have a great night.